I'm getting so tired. I'm getting so.
Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and welcome to the show, y'all. Today, I'm going to tell you about this guy named Brad. Brad went up for parole after 15 years in the penitentiary, and he made it. He is headed home. When he left the town, Brad had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, and now he's headed back. He's got a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old. They've been visiting him while he's been locked up. His wife has been bringing them faithfully to see him. His brother, when he had the chance he would come to visit him, his mother and father, Brad's mother and father, they passed away after about his first 5 years in, right? So his whole family is his wife and kids and his brother. That's all he has left as far as family. He doesn't know his aunties and uncles. They live in a different state. He has his brother and his wife and his 2 kids. So when he gets ready to go home, they know he's made parole because they were there. He calls them and he has to get all of the information ready for his home plan. A home plan is basically where you're going to be telling the parole board that you're going to be living. And that's it. They want to know where you're going to be living. So your parole officer will go through there and he'll make sure, or she will make sure that there are no weapons, because felons are not allowed to have weapons. They'll make sure that it's a decent living condition or situation as much as they can. They'll make sure that the person that you're going to be going to stay with is doing this of their own free will, not being forced, paid, or anything like that. And then also you have to fill out a job plan. His job plan was great. He was going to be working for his father-in-law, his wife's father. So he was going to be doing just fine, doing commercial cleaning stuff. Her father had a contract where they clean up some state buildings, they wax floors, they do all this type of thing. And he had been doing that, Brad had been doing that while he's been in prison. So he was going to be walking into a situation that he was familiar with as far as employment. So as far as Brad was concerned, everything was going to be just fine. But as we know, life has a way of throwing a monkey wrench into the game. Now with Brad, the monkey wrench for him was way more than one person should have to bear, especially when you're about to leave prison and go home. He called home and he was talking to his wife, and he was getting all the information for his home plan, and she was reluctant. He could tell her demeanor was off. The way she was talking, it wasn't right. So he asked her, he said, is there anything that I need to know? Why are you hesitant on wanting to help me get this application filled out? So his wife was one of those types of people. She was like, you ever heard of those types of women that just say it, rip the Band-Aid off, they don't play around with it? She was like that. So she came on with it. She said, I don't think it'd be a good idea for you to come home. And he said, what do you mean? I don't think it'd be a good idea for you to come here, home. And she was adamant in that. And then he kept pushing and kept pushing. And what he found out was that she didn't want him to come home to her because she had been messing around. And she told him, she said, I found me somebody else. You need to get out and go somewhere else and get your life together. It just wouldn't be a good idea for you to come here. Now, Brad, not wanting to let go and give up that fast, that easily, he was like, look, I'll come, you keep doing what you're doing. Just let me get out of here and then let me get myself together. And she was like, no, you cannot come here. I'm in love with somebody else, and that's just that. So he kept pushing and kept pushing. And like I said, Brad's wife, she rips the band off. She said, look, you want to know who it is? And he kept saying, yes, tell me who it is. And she said, it's your brother. So silence. The phone went silent. Brad was speechless. He couldn't even muster a word. He sat there. He didn't cry. He got angry. He felt betrayed. And he kept thinking to himself, this can't be true. She's lying. It's got to be something going on. My brother, my world, my best friend wouldn't do that to me. That's what he kept thinking. So she sat there and she didn't say anything. And after a couple of minutes, she just said real coldly, like, I gotta go. And hung up the phone. And this was the first time in his 15 years of being in prison that she didn't say I love you when she hung up the phone, and he didn't get to say it back. And that stuck to him like glue. That told him this was real. He kept spinning out of control, though his mind was playing tricks on him, because just a couple of weeks ago, she was at the parole board playing her role, happy, excited, telling him that life was going to be great. His brother was sitting right beside her, behind him, as he was talking to the parole people. And when they heard the announcement that they were going to be granting him parole, they all clapped, even his kids. So he's spinning out of control. He's not understanding what's going on. Is this a game to them? Is this a joke? They came there and then they said all of these things, and now I'm being told something else. He's spinning out of control. He's getting angry, y'all. He's pissed off. Because what he don't understand is, how could somebody be so cold? You loved me yesterday, but then not today. And you've been messing around for a while, but all of a sudden today, you don't love me. So that means you ain't loved me then. He's tripping about that. And I don't blame him. So now, he doesn't have anything to turn in on his home plan, so he's stalling. And the counselor calls him into the office to sit down and talk to him, because the counselor is responsible for making sure that everything is prepared right, that's going to be sent to the institution of parole officers, that's going to send it downtown, that's going to make sure that everything is all right before they let you out of the penitentiary. So when he goes in to talk to the counselor asks him, say, how you doing? He looks back at the counselor and he says, I'm doing okay, I guess, for somebody that just found out that their wife is cheating on him with his own brother. So the counselor leans back in the chair and he looks at him, because the counselor has to calculate this from a different point of view. The counselor has to look at him and size up real fast. Is he in duress? Is he planning to do something to somebody, or is he planning to do something to himself? But at the same time, the counselor has to make sure that he understands to some extent, that he relates and he can understand and he cares about what he's going through. But the main thing the counselor wants to know, is he about to explode? Is he about to explode? Because once he determines yay or nay on that, then they'll move forward. So the counselor, he talks to him. He said, tell me a little bit more about what you mean, how you're feeling when you say you feel betrayed, you're angry, you're hurt. He said, do you think about trying to get some get back? Do you want your lick back? And Brad looks at him. He knows that the counselor's trying to find out, is he wanting revenge or not? So he tells him, no, I'm not trying to hurt anybody, and I'm not, most definitely not trying to hurt myself. I just don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't have any family here. I don't have anywhere to go. I was going to stay with my wife, but now I can't stay with my wife, because my wife is she's cheating with my brother. And my brother's the only other person that I have. So I can't go stay with him. He said, I'm going to take a long shot here. He said, the counselor said, have you talked to your brother? He said, no, I haven't talked to my brother. I don't know what to say to him. He said, well, let's try and call him. Because sometimes things are not always what they seem, you know. But let's try to make sure that your brother's not going to help you before then. Now, I know it may be uncomfortable, but what I'm telling you is that if you can't get somewhere to stay, whether it be with your wife or your brother, even though it may be uncomfortable, then you're going to have to go to a halfway house. And if you don't get accepted by a halfway house, then you may have to go back in front of the parole board at a later date. That means you're going to have to stay in here longer, and I know you don't want to do that. And Brad told him, no, I don't want to stay here any longer than I have to. I'm ready to go home. It's just that right now, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. So they call up his brother. And Brad is talking to his brother, and it's on intercom. So when a counselor makes a phone call for you, they keep it on intercom so they can hear everything that's being said. They don't want you trying to be slick, saying something you don't have no business, especially on the state phone. So he's talking to his brother, and his brother is talking and acting as if he doesn't know what's going on. Apparently, she hadn't called and told him that she has told Brad what's going on between them two. So Brad comes straight with it. He said, man, you got something you need to tell me. So his brother pauses for a second, and he said, not that I can think of. He said, man, Brad sitting on the phone, he looked at the counselor, and he looked back at the phone. He said, man, you been messing with my wife. His brother went silent for a couple of seconds, and he said, bro, it ain't even like that. He said, well, tell me, what is it like? Tell me, what is it like? Because I don't understand you, my brother, messing with my wife, knowing that I love my wife the way I do. So his brother said, man, it just happened. He said, how did it just happen? What happened? And then his brother said, man, I ain't finna get into all of that, man. You don't need to hear all of that. But Brad, he can't let it go. He want to hear. He want to hear when they started doing this, and why didn't they tell him a long time ago, because this has been going on for a minute. It's been going on for a minute, for over a year. And why would they wait to the end of the sentence? Why would they wait? He's thinking about all of these things. So his brother tells him, man, said, one day we left the visit, and when we left visit, we went by a little club, and we had some drinks. She was talking about how much she missed you and all this and that. And then after a few more drinks, she started talking about how much she missed the touch of a man. And I was tipsy, and she was tipsy. And I thought it would be a one-time thing. I didn't think it would be something that we would continue to do. But he said we slept together that night. Now Brad is holding on to the chair. The PO can look and see he's squeezing the arms of the chair so hard that his fingers, you can see the blood is filling up on his fingers, on the side of his fingers. So the PO, he's paying attention to all that because he's trained to do that. His jaw is real tight too. He's tense. So now he's wondering if this is a good idea at all to stay on the phone. So the PO says, we're going to wrap this up. So Brad looks at him and he just asked him, he said, man, what am I going to do now? And his brother said, man, I'm still with you, man. I still got you. You can come stay here if you want to. He said, I'm going to be over there. And that really crushed Brad. He said, nah, man, I don't want nothing from you ever again. Then he hung the phone up. He looked at the counselor. And the counselor was like, man, that's a hard one right there. He said, look here, we're going to get you into one of these halfway houses, man, so you can go home. And Brad told him, I don't have any money. Everything that I was making, everything, every cent, I sent home to her. Everything. I don't have a nickel to my name. I don't have anywhere to go, and I don't have any family now. So the counselor told him, man, you got your 2 daughters. You still got your 2 daughters, man. And you're going to be okay, even though it don't look like it right now. He said, what I need you to do is keep your eyes on the prize, man. Think about your kids. Focus on you and your kids. So Brad looks at him and he's holding back the tears, y'all. Because it's hard. He's holding them back. This is hard for him. Be hard for anybody dealing with a situation like this. So he tells the counselor, he said, look, man, He said, is it any way that I can get into a halfway house and then pay them later? He said, it's a couple of them that might do that, but he said, you're going to at least need $125. At least need that. So Brad tells me, I'll do what I can, man, but I don't know where it's going to come from. So he leaves the counselor's office, goes back to his cell, and he's talking to his cellie. His cellie knows what's going on, right? Because that's who he talks to. And he tells his cellie, he said, man, I ain't got to know where to go. I need at least $125 so I can make it out of here. His cellie said, man, I'm going to help you out with that. I'm going to call my mom and see if she can round up $125 so you can get into this halfway house. And then you take it from there. So Brad thanked him. And his cellie went to the phone. He called his mom, and his mom said, yes, sure they will help, because him and his cellie have been cellie for the last 8 years, and they become like family. They become like family. So they got the money together for him. The next day he went back and he told the counselors, he said, look, he said, I got the money. I got the money. But I need to get into that halfway house. And he said that, what about the job? So the counselor told him, he said, look, they're going to help you find a job. And when they help you find this job, they're going to take out the money per week, put the other money in the bank. Now, but you have to agree for the first 90 days. You got to agree to stay there, continue to pay, and they're not going to give you all of your check. It's going in the bank. They're going to give you $20 a week for you to spend on different things while you're at work. If you want to buy you some lunch or whatever the case may be, buy you something extra to eat. But that's it. It's very, very strict. They try to do that so that you can have some money saved up in the bank by the time you leave. Okay? So Brad agreed to all of that. He just wanted out. But one thing the counselor told him, he said, man, you need to stay away from your wife. You need to stay away from your brother. Right now, they're still too toxic, and it might not be good for you to be around them. You don't want to make no mistakes and end up back in here. Especially not with a new charge. So Brad looked at him. He told him, he said, I understand, man. I understand it. I'm going to stay away from them. So it took about a month for them to get the situation worked out, and Brad was released to the halfway house. So when he went to the halfway house, the counselors there, they talked to him. His parole officer was there. He talked to him. And they all decided together that Brad might need to see a therapist. Now, they had counselors that come in, therapists that come in, you know what I'm saying, every week to do individual counseling sessions and group therapy. So Brad was enrolled in both of them. And it took him a while to get to the point to where he could understand that he was not to blame for the situation that his wife and his brother found themselves in, but he had to accept the fact that she had a right to move on with her life. And it took him a while to get there, but he got there. He got there. So after about 6 months, he's still at the halfway house, and he's really, really strong in what he's learning in therapy and who he is as a man. So he took a long shot and he called the number that he had been calling for 15 years to his wife, and she answered the phone. She didn't recognize the number, but she answered the phone. She knew he was out. She knew he was out. She had been keeping up with him. So she figured it might be him. So when she answered the phone, she said, hello. Brad on the other end. He said, hey, how you doing? She said, I'm doing okay. She said, how are you doing? He said, I'm better. I'm good. He said, I just wanted to call and ask you, could I see my kids? And she said, of course. So they met at a McDonald's, not too far from the halfway house. And they sat there at the McDonald's. He bought food for all of them to eat, including her. And he talked to his son and his daughter. Now, they were still a little bit upset at the situation because they wanted their father to be with them. They were confused by the situation. You know what I'm saying? Why would their uncle be with their mother when their father was around? They knew grown folk stuff, but they didn't understand grown folk stuff. You know what I'm saying? So they talked to him, while she got up and walked away from the table. And they asked him, when are you coming home? And he said, I won't be coming home to stay with your mother. Your mother's moved on with her life, and I'm moving on with mine. But I'm always be here for y'all. So his daughter, she looked at him and she cried. And he knew why she was crying, because she was the baby. And she had come to love him, even under the circumstances of through visits and phone calls and letters and pictures and all. She had come to love him in a way as if he had never been gone. And she said, I want to stay with you, Daddy. And he said, one day you will. He said, but I need you to obey your mama and do what she tells you. Because you got to understand something. I left her. She didn't leave me. Remember that. And he looked at her. He said, you understand? And she said, yes, I understand. And his son he understood too. So Brad went on, got himself together, started working at a construction site. He wanted to do commercial cleaning, but he couldn't get that job. So he's been working at this construction site, doing fine. He got promoted. Now he had his own little 6-man crew, making good money. He had him a nice apartment, 2-bedroom apartment. But he wanted something bigger, so when his kids came over to stay, they would have separate rooms. And he kept grinding and grinding. And it took him another year, and he was able to get a house. Because he wasn't spending money on nothing. He was still doing the penitentiary thing, eating ramen noodles. But he was grinding because he wanted his kids to have somewhere to stay when they came with him, not sleeping on the couch and one in the room. So he got the house, and now everything was good. And then here come his wife. Things didn't work out between her and Brad's brother. So here she comes. She wants to stay. She wants to try again. Brad don't fall for it. He keeps it moving. He got no hard feelings, but he keeps it moving. Sometimes that's what we have to do, y'all, when we find ourselves in tough situations. Keep getting up, putting one foot in front of the other, and you'll be just fine. Yes, Brad admitted, in his therapy sessions, that he had thought about hurting both of them. But he knew in hurting his brother and his wife, he would be hurting his son and his daughter. So he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.